Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, coming to you from West Chicago, Illinois. Dropped my load in Milwaukee this morning. I'm already backed into a door, picking up my next load. This is a two-stop pickup. So today's May 9th. Some interesting stuff happened on this day. On this day in 1980, Friday the 13th premiered. The original Friday the 13th. It's kind of weird though. It didn't premiere on the 13th of the month. But anyway, Friday the 13th premiered on this day in 1980. On this day in 1960, the FDA approved the first birth control pill. Changed a lot of lives. Probably helped usher in the sexual revolution. If you're into that kind of thing. 1958, the Alfred Hitchcock film Vertigo, starring Jimmy Stewart, and Kim Novak, premiered. And Vertigo is generally regarded as one of the greatest films ever made. And if I could recommend, if you ever have the opportunity to do this, there was this theater on Colley Avenue in Ghent, which is part of Norfolk, Virginia. And they used to show all the old movies on the big screen. And I've seen a few Hitchcock films, including Rear Window and North by Northwest, at the theater there. And I can't remember, maybe it's called the Ghent Theater. And Ghent is G-H-E-N-T, like Ghent in the Netherlands. And that's the neighborhood in Norfolk. Rear Window, of course, also starred Jimmy Stewart, but his co-star in that was Grace Kelly. And if you've never seen Rear Window, it's worth it just to see her. Incredibly, strikingly beautiful. Eventually became the Princess of Monaco, married Prince Rainier of Monaco. Anyway, those old films on the big screen are really cool. And Hitchcock films were just so rich with detail and just if you ever took a class on film or anything, Hitchcock is like this person to study. He's like Scorsese, you know. But anyway, that happened in 1958. On this day in 1800, in Torrington, Connecticut, the abolitionist John Brown was born. Of course, he's the one that led the raid on the U.S. Arsenal in Harper's Ferry, West. Well, I think it was technically Virginia then. I don't think it was West Virginia yet. In Harper's Ferry, you can visit the armory there. There's several historic sites around Harper's Ferry and stuff. Also born on this day, I think in 1948 maybe, check me on that, was Billy Joel. And another famous piano player, really one of the pioneers of rock and roll, died on this day in 2020 at the age of 87, and that was Little Richard. So that's some interesting stuff from May 9th. Got my load delivered. Like I said, I'm picking up I got a second stop over in Geneva, Illinois, to pick up, and then this is going to Buffalo, and then I'm picking up again in Western New York, be headed back this way. Hopefully make most of that trip by Sunday evening. Because even though my delivery's on Monday morning, hold on. Sorry about that. I asked him to put the pallets in sideways because I got more pallets to put in there, and if the numbers are right, I don't know. He's asking me about the weight. I'm like, man, we haven't even got anything in the trailer yet. I'll worry about the weight when we get something in the trailer. So anyway, yeah, so that's May 9th. That's what I'm up to. I wanted to, so I've started thinking about where people's money goes and how it's being used. And what I'm referring to is that there are all sorts of instances where, I was talking about pet deposits a little bit yesterday, but there are all sorts of instances where truck drivers are charged for things or even agree to things that may seem beneficial on the surface but might not be. And the more important thing is, what is it that a driver can control, So let me give you an example. There are many leasing companies, many companies that lease trucks. Almost all of them want some kind of security deposit or something like that. Now, I can certainly speak to Prime because they, I've had 2 leases with success. And in that instance, what they did is they have a performance bond, they call it, and it's $1,500. And that money is withheld for like 30 weeks of the lease. So, and it does roll over. So that's not that big of a security deposit. But of course, because I turned my truck in early, I didn't get that security deposit back because it's to guarantee that the lease is fully performed, not that you turn the truck in good condition. But I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they mentioned their e-fund at Prime. And so just generally speaking, a lot of companies have holdbacks, or in the case of the e-fund, voluntary holdbacks, for any number of reasons. Like I mentioned Hirschbach yesterday because they have that egregious pet deposit. But for instance, Hirschbach takes a piece of every mile you run and puts it into a maintenance fund, and then that money is pooled, and then if you need a repair, it's not netted out of your settlement like it is, for example, at Prime. At Prime, if you have a $700 repair that's not covered by warranty, let's say it's just $700 in maintenance, like oil change and chassis lube, air filter, blah, 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 right? Let's say it was $700. Well, at Prime, they debit that from your next settlement. That $700 shows up as a debit. At my understanding, well, let me back up because I don't know if Hirschbach covers maintenance, but just preventive maintenance. But let's say that there's, I just realized my phone might fall. Let's say there's a $700 repair on the truck, not tires, but a repair. At Hirschbach, you don't see that netted out of your settlement because it comes from the maintenance fund or the repair fund. At Prime, you would see that netted out of your settlement. And there might be some other schemes that other leasing companies do, like WFX or whoever it is, right? There are all sorts of stuff like that. But here's the thing. At Hirschbach, right, there's money going into that maintenance fund, repair fund, every single week from all the miles that are driven. But you, as the driver who drove those miles, as the lessee or the owner, if you never use that money, you've lost it. That's my understanding. You don't get a refund from that. The other thing that happens is that, all the money that goes in there basically is controlled by the company. And, they might say, oh, there was a $700 repair, but parts and labor really only cost them $350. Well, guess what? That other $350 went in their pockets. Now, we all know how shops work, right? Like, I don't care whether you hire a carpenter, plumber, electrician, or you go to a car repair shop, right? They upcharge on the parts. Everybody knows that. But I don't have any company that's making me give them money every month in case I need a repair, or every week. So I pretty much guarantee that Hirschbach is floating that maintenance fund. Like, all the money that's withheld is not put into a segregated account as cash. It's just a number on a piece of paper, okay? And it's like insurance, right? They're betting that between the arbitrage on the price of the actual price that it costs them to do that repair and what they charge, plus the fact that there's always going to be more money going in there than they could possibly get charged for repairs. It's just another revenue stream for them, okay? And the thing about private companies is you don't get to see their books. Nobody gets to see their books. There's zero oversight. But these are big companies that employ a lot of people. And so when I was talking to somebody and they said they had, a fairly large sum of money in an E-fund at Prime, and I said, man, that's a lot of money. I said, I never use the E-fund at Prime. I don't want them to have control of my money. And one of the things they said, and I don't know if this is something that is promulgated by accountants everywhere, but they're like, oh, well, that E-fund, it's just like a maintenance kind of slush fund, and so you don't pay taxes on it until you use the money or you take the money. And my response was, well, who cares when you pay the taxes, right? Because you could pay the taxes and use that money as you want. Now, I know there are people that are going to say, yeah, but Prime's paying interest on that. Okay, but Prime still controls it. And the interest rate that's stated on the statements, and it is on there, it is ticked up as interest rates ticked up. But I'm here to tell you that the money in the E-fund, and I'll get to the tire fund and the end of lease bonus in a second, but like the money in the E-fund, I guarantee, and I can't prove it either way, right? I can't prove that I'm right or that and no one's going to prove I'm wrong. But I would bet a lot of money that if you aggregated all the money that people are being told they have in their E-fund, if you aggregated that across all the drivers, that Prime does not have that cash on hand. And if they do, it's not in a segregated account. And you say, well, why? I don't really care as long as they pay me. Well, here's the thing. If a bank goes bankrupt, if federal regulators shut a bank down, and you have $50,000 in the savings account, that money is guaranteed by the federal government. And if the money was misspent, someone's going to jail, right? Like Treasury has their own police department, Treasury agents. They're going to put somebody in jail for that. What typically happens, because banks close down, actually probably a dozen or so regional banks close almost every year, or they're consolidated. And when you're a depositor at that bank, then another bank that's solvent, it's got plenty of cash, they come in, they say, yeah, we'll take all of the deposits and everybody will be made whole. They'll just move it over. The FDIC, the Treasury, the Fed maybe gets involved in it, but everybody's made whole. Even when there's if a bank went into bankruptcy or is shut down by regulators. But here's the difference. If a company like a Hirschbach or a Prime went bankrupt, a lot of drivers would probably be like, you know what? I'm turning my truck in, I'm out. I want my E-fund money. Guess what? The E-fund is not wages, okay? Because the E-fund for lease operators, that's money was held back, even voluntarily, from an independent contractor. I am very confident that to get money out of the E-fund, if that company declared bankruptcy, you would be required to petition the bankruptcy court for that money. Because what would happen is, as soon as they went into bankruptcy, the U.S. trustee would then step in and control all of their assets. All of their assets. Every truck, every trailer, every building, right? Now, if you had a lease, you would have rights under that lease from success. But all the money that was held in their accounts, you would have to petition the court to get access to that money. And there would probably be secured creditors that would have claim to that money too. Because you are a bondholder in a way, you're giving them money voluntarily that they're using for their operations, okay? Remember I talked about U.S. Express and I said, they kind of had financial doublespeak when they talked about, we use a revolver for operations, right? Well, that was code for we borrow money just to keep the frickin' lights on, just to make payroll. Well, if you look at all the money that's held back for tire fund, for end-of-lease bonus, and in E-fund, that's a pretty big pile of cash that, while it's not really a pile of cash because it was all held back, what it is it really is one giant ass payable that the company has, that Prime has. The interesting thing about it, though, is that Prime controls how it's paid out, except if, of course, the company folded. And, so when you look at Prime buys tires by the truckload, but they're holding back for a tire fund, and then, a super single drive tire costs about $1,600 in the real world. Maybe if you get it at the terminal, you get a discount, it's $200 cheaper. But Prime bought that tire for probably, I don't know what the unit price is, but it wouldn't shock me they would say $900. So even though TA charges you an extra $600 for the tire, Prime only charges you an extra $400 for the tire. But there's this big holdback And like I was held back on my truck. I didn't put one tire on my 2024 Peterbilt, which by the way is back out on the road. And I think somebody posted something somewhere because they are leasing a new 2024 Peterbilt. So best of luck to them. And I truly mean that. I hope it turns out good for them. But so I didn't use a dime of the tire fund money. And I obviously didn't get back my end of lease bonus, which was just a holdback. I didn't get back my security bond money, $1,500. So, one of the things that I'm always an advocate for is keeping your money yours. Do not let other people control your money. I feel like I'm out of focus. Maybe it's just my glasses. Don't let other people control your money to any extent that you don't have to. And let me give you an example that used to come up all the time when I was practicing law. And this is like I said, it's something that comes up all the time. So I'd have a client that would have a dispute with somebody else. And they'd be like, hey, I got charged for this, but I didn't get what I was supposed to. And, the big company, right, wants to freaking, kick the little guy. So they immediately start threatening litigation and stuff. And they'd be like, look, if you send us this payment, we won't send you to collections. Or if you send us this much money, we won't sue you. And my response to that was always, never, ever give up your money to prevent something from happening like a lawsuit. If I will not get, I would tell my clients, you don't give them a dime because they're gonna, if they said, oh, send us $1,000 and we won't litigate, you send them $1,000, a week later they're gonna call for and demand another $1,000, and you could send them $1,000 and they're still gonna sue you, right? All you're doing is giving them money to litigate against you. If we're gonna give up any money, it's gonna be after there's a settlement agreement and where they can't litigate against you as long as you meet the terms of the contract. Never give up money. Never let someone else have control. And even when there's a dispute about who is owed money, I used to tell clients, like sometimes it'd be an escrow situation or whatever, I would tell clients, hey, don't give anybody the money. If we have to, they can get a judge to decide who gets the money. Because once you give it up, then you got to fight to get it back. And since I'm talking about lawyering, and I mentioned how banks, if you said, oh, I got $50,000 in my e-fund, that's the same as it's in a bank because I'm getting interest. No, because the bank, even if the bank goes under, there's a way for you to get that money, and even very quickly, right? But here's the other thing. It's not even being held in what is called escrow, right? Like there are title companies for real estate deals that hold money in escrow. Attorneys have an escrow fund, right? We call it IOLTA, which is like, it's client money that the attorney has custody of, but it's not the attorney's money. And they certainly can't use it for operations. I mean, that's one of the quickest ways there is to get disbarred, is mishandling client money. But see, like I used to get deposits on foreclosure sales that I would conduct on the courthouse steps, and somebody, if they bought the house at the auction, they'd be required to put up a deposit. Sometimes it was 20 grand, sometimes it was 30, depending on the price of the property. It might even be like 50 grand. And people would give me cashier's checks at the sale, and I would immediately, I wouldn't even go back to my office. I would immediately go to the branch of the bank that we use for our for our trust accounts, and I would deposit that money, and then get the receipt for the deposit. I didn't want that money in my hand any longer than was necessary, because it was not my firm's money. It was a client's money, and I just had custody of it. And I wanted to make sure that it was in the bank. But with all these funds, the maintenance fund, the E fund, there's no custodial arrangement, right? They can use that money however they want. And my suggestion is, no matter what, I don't care how good you think a company is doing, right? Because if you bury your head in the sand and you're not really good at reading the tea leaves, and I don't think anybody is really good at it. Some people might pick up on certain signals, but how many times have you heard about companies that go under and every single person's like, I didn't even see it coming. There was some place that went out of business recently. People went to work like they were on second shift or third shift. They went to the factory or the place they worked. They couldn't get in. They're like, what's going on? And then they wait in the parking lot, and a couple hours later they get a message saying, oh yeah, the company shut down. That happens at trucking companies. Trucking companies shut down. They still got people out driving around, fat, dumb, and happy. They don't know anything's going on. It can happen to any company. And when a company is privately held, it can happen that fast. And when you don't understand the money and where the money's coming from and where it's going to, and you're trusting this company with your money, and there's no protections, right? There's no FDIC backing you up. There's no attorney grievance commission backing you up. It's just them and you, and if they got the money, you got to fight to get it. So all I'm saying is that, there are so many ways that these trucking companies are getting income from drivers. And, with the way the market's been, ask yourself this: is any trucking company really killing it hauling cargo right now? And have they been over the past year and a half? My answer is no. You look at all the publicly traded companies. All these publicly traded companies had crappy first quarters, and this is on the back of a crappy year in 2023. Ask yourself, does it make sense that my company is so much smarter than everybody and they're just totally killing it? Or is part of the fact that they look like they're totally killing it coming from the fact that they're not buying most of the equipment that's moving their stuff, or at least a big cost, which is the tractor, that they're holding back money from drivers for, sketchy reasons, maintenance fund or whatever, tire fund. They're making money at every turn. And, I'm not complaining about this. I understood all of this, once I started reading the documents. I share it not because I'm even in that situation, but I share it because other people don't realize it. And, like I said on my last video, I was talking with somebody and I was saying a lot of people don't understand what they don't understand, or another way of saying it, they don't know what they don't know. So do not, and this is true in any company, right? Don't place your trust in that company. Control your own assets to the best, the highest extent possible, right? And I said to somebody just probably this morning, I think I was talking with somebody, but I said it before. I feel like companies like Prime and other companies that have really high percentages of all their drivers are leasing, those companies, trucking is just the front. It's just the white label for what they really are. And it's a truck sales and financing company. Or, you know, and like, ask yourself this: what's my company's core competency? Is it own it? You know, I'm a truck driver. Shouldn't my company's core competency be trucking and maybe logistics? Should it be owning hotels, restaurants, casinos, you know, stockyards? You know, like, what business are they really in? What are they focused on? And, you know, and I look at some of the other big carriers. You know, I was talking with somebody about Crete, and I said, and I don't know that much about Crete. Crete's privately held, but my suspicion is that at Crete, the vast majority of all drivers are company drivers, instead of the vast majority being lease operators, which tells me that their growth has been more organic. I don't think that companies that have huge lease fleets get that big just because they're really good at carrying stuff from point A to point B. I think they're, you know, and I was talking with somebody, and they were expressing shock at how, like, there's this rollout of the cameras and how lame it is, you know, how bad the management is at, like, rolling things out and even following through on the PC stuff. And I said, you know what, man, it's organizational dynamics, right? You get these companies that they reach a point where there's just inertia, where they can have 40 to 50% of the people that really just aren't that good at their jobs, but there's enough people flipping enough switches to keep the lights on. And a lot of times it's the rank and file. So it's like I said this before. Prime says they're driven by the best, and I don't disagree with that. I think there's a lot of great drivers at Prime, but are they supported by the best? And are the efforts of the drivers, you know, going to all sorts of other stuff, which, by the way, is legal, right? But it starts to feel like it's smoke and mirrors. And, you know, I know that a lot of people have benefited from coming into the trucking industry, and a lot of people benefit from their leases and from doing business the way they do. But it doesn't mean that there's still not something, you know, there's still not something sub rosa, you know, hidden, you know, that's secret or tricky going on. And, you know, again, control the money that you control. Don't count on anybody not cooking the books. Don't count on anybody not doing a Ponzi scheme. Don't count on anybody being a good fiduciary that's not legally required to be a good fiduciary. So, and this is true in anything. This is true in anything. But when it's your livelihood, when you know, many of us have a lot wrapped up in this, it's really vital to just pay close attention. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. You know, I have a lot of friends, like I said, in the trucking industry, and especially at Prime, and they're doing a lot of good things, and I just want them to get everything that they're owed and, you know, have security. So anyway, I will talk to you later. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned. There's more interesting stuff to talk about.